Today I thought I would share how I do saddle stitching here at the Makers Mill Leatherworks in Wolfeboro, New Hampshire. And I've posted this wee chart from Best Leather to show you the difference between a saddle stitch and a machined lock stitch, where the machine lock stitch is not as secure as saddle stitching in the long run. Here I'm just sort of deepening, or should I say making sure that I've punched the holes out all the way through the leather so that it makes it easier for these old hands to hand sew the leather. Now, in the old days, I used to use an awl and 2 needles after I used a pricking iron to mark where the stitches were, not to chisel all the way through. And in this video, partway through the video, I show you me picking up the awl and giving you a demonstration of how I did it back then. But to start off with, I'm just using this little scrap piece of leather that I punched the holes in to stitch, and I'm going to go ahead and get started with 2 needles, 1 needle at each end, and start hand stitching this by putting the piece of leather into a stitching pony, which I made here at Makers Mill downstairs in the carpenter shop. So we're setting it up, and we get started off by, let me see, the left hand. No, let me adjust the camera so that it might get a better picture. There we go. Oh no, you don't want to look at that mug. Well, here we go. We get closer down to the work at hand, and hopefully you'll be able to see what I'm doing. So start off, the thread, I make it about 4 times longer than the distance I'm stitching up, and that gives me plenty of thread that will cover the thickness of leather. So I start off 1 hole back, or should I say closer to me, and then I come up to the first hole and put the needles through. Now, here we're getting started. Even up the threads. I start with my left hand going through the hole. I grab that needle with my right hand and the other needle, which I then point through. The other needle I point through, and going back through the other way, I'm also pulling back on the thread at the same time. So it may end up speeding up a wee bit, you'll see. I'm taking it slow, and then I'm going to back through with the other needle, pulling back on the thread at the same time. And there, I've dropped that needle just so I could show you. There's the one needle, and here comes the other needle. There we go. So, and I get started off, and I don't need to be talking this whole time, but you can see in the background there's someone else here working on a bracelet that they have made, and they're putting snaps on, as well as they're going to be jewelry put on this bracelet that was, I believe, made downstairs in a metalsmithing shop. There's just so many things here to do at Makers Mill. It's really grand. And further on in this video, you'll get to see me stitching up a strap that I'm making as part of a purse that I'm making for my wife. One of the straps is going to be about 40 inches in length, and I'm going to be hand stitching the whole purse from start to finish. So It's a very relaxing thing to do. Now, one of the things that if you do a lot of leather work, you might want to do what I did in my youth when I did this as a business, and that is I made two little pinky gloves that would slide onto my pinkies, because when you tighten your leather up, you're, you're cutting into the base of your pinky or into the knuckle butt of your pinky. And I used to maybe cut in, I had slots in my pinky that were maybe about a 16th of an inch deep. So I came up with using these little thin leathered pinky gloves. It's a good thing to do if you find that you're cutting into your pinkies when you're tensioning up the leather. And it's good in this way also to make sure that whatever you do, you be consistent. Now, I'm always coming through from the left-hand side first, followed with the right-hand side and pulling on the thread. And then I do a little loop over the needle, which you're not really seeing too easily with my left hand. But as long as I do that loop each and every time, the stitching should come out looking even. Whatever you do, always do the same thing. Don't go, oh, let me do a loop, skip it 2 or 3 times, then do another loop, because then it will start looking uneven. So you want to make sure that you try and continue to be very steady on this. Now, I'm getting close to the end of this piece of leather, and then I think we're going to change the camera angle, looking from the other side, and I'll be stitching the strap that's going to be part of my wife's purse, which is made of leather. I am using her older purse, which was a vinyl purse, and the vinyl started breaking down. I'm using it as a pattern, so hopefully I'll be able to get it all put together. Oh, that's not, it's very, oh, there we go. I can see now the stitching on that. So that's very good. All right, now after I finish the stitching on any leather that I do, I go ahead and I take a hammer and I just tap it down to help sort of flatten it out and close the holes up a bit. So this is what's happening here. I'm just tapping it down and closing it up. This part of the video, I'm going to demonstrate how I use an awl and 2 needles combined while stitching up by hand, which we don't have to do today because of the use of stitching chisels, which makes the holes bigger and also all the way through the leather, so you don't have to punch the holes with the leather. But this is what I did back in the 70s and 80s after using a pricking iron to mark the holes. So you can see, if I would just slow down a bit maybe, there we go. I punch the hole, which is already punched, with the awl and come through with the offside needle and then going back through with the near side needle. And remembering to always draw back on the thread when I'm putting the near side needle back through the leather. And that way I don't end up stitching through the thread and causing a problem where it would not tighten up or snug up to finish with. Now this process does take a little longer, and you also have to pay more attention to what you're doing. But the one thing about the awl is you could follow it through with the offside needle when you're drawing it out. And it was a very good way of doing it. So now today we use stitching chisels, which punches the hole all the way through. And that speeds the process up tremendously. and it's just something that I never got to experience back in the 70s or 80s. Now, I started stitching leather actually when I was in the US Air Force in 1971-72 when I was stationed over at Clark Air Base in the Philippines. The base had a crafts shop or area where you could go in and do a number of different crafts, and one of them was leather. So they had some very basic tools that I got started using while I was in the Air Force. My education for this was basically, I hate saying basically, but I did it, about watching Mr. Pike in Arlington, Massachusetts in 1967 using an awl and 2 needles to stitch up a piece of bridal work. And having watched him do that, I was able to use it when I finally got stationed over in the Philippines. When I got out of the Air Force in 1972, I came back up to New Hampshire and worked as an electrician for about 9 months and decided I wanted to go and get a job working with the horses. So I went down to the Potomac Horse Center in Gaithersburg, Maryland, and I took the 3-month residential course down there for the horse masters. And after passing that, I ended up working there for 2 years, during which I picked up an awl and 2 needles and some other basic leather tools and started repairing the tack at the Potomac Horse Center, along with teaching and managing one of the aisles at the Potomac Horse Center. But those 2 years showed me that it was better for me to use my talent of using my hands to make a living, and rather than trying to teach people how to ride the way I rode. So I went ahead and got a job at Vortenberg Saddlery in Baltimore, Maryland, and I worked for them for 2 years. And then I moved on to work for Pratt Saddle for 7 years. Or was it 9 years? It was 9 years for Pratt Saddle. In the early 80s, I left Pratt Saddle and started my own tack repair business in Glendon, Maryland, where it gave me the opportunity not only to have my own business, but also to go out and ride horses just about every day that I wanted to, because I didn't open the shop until 10 o'clock in the morning. It was quite a wonderful experience. And then we moved to Florida so we could be down closer to our family.